Episode 3, 2002. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew.
Now, on Inside the Buffalo...
Wait! Can't use that title. How about this? All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of Down and Drought, your weekly walk down memory lane with the Buffalo Bills and their 17-year playoff drought. I'm Prescott Rossi. Alongside me this week, News 8 Sports Director Thad Brown and former News 8 Weekend Sports anchor Dave Yates. Fellows, thank you for joining, and thank you for tuning in, whether it be on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud, all the social media devices you can possibly imagine. We cannot thank you enough for tuning in. And fellas, as we turn to 2002, March 1st, a big day in the Bills offseason in 2002, they release Rob Johnson. The immediate thoughts coming right after Johnson is released.
Not a shock. You know, he had proven that he was not the answer. I mean, no one really liked him. He was the other guy with the Doug Flutie thing. So there was a large percentage of Flutie fanatics, emphasis on fanatics, that were, exceptionally happy to see Rob Johnson go. But from a football point of view, he was always the great hope. You know, he had the physical tools, but could he put it together? He never did. He got hurt.
Rob, we respect you too, but you don't look like a football. You look like a male model for Versace or something. I mean that the best possible way.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you look good.
That does wonders, for the locker room.
Exactly.
Well, wait a second, guys. A lot of starting quarterbacks in the NFL look a little bit like this. We do have a picture of Rob, right?
Yeah, you aren't trying to promote this image at all. Look at you there, Rob.
You knew it was coming. We were talking about quarterbacks. I guess Drew Bledsoe is the talk. He's going to be the first quarterback taken.
Right.
Where do you see yourself fitting in?
That's a good question. I don't know right now.
Do you plan to be back in Buffalo?
No.
Not at all.
Actually, there was just a report. I just got off the phone with my agent, and John Clayton reported that I wasn't going to go back. So.
So what do you know? What do you know?
I mean, I just found out about 5 minutes ago. So.
Seriously.
Wow. How does that make you feel?
I'm kind of happy.
Yeah.
Really?
It hasn't been an easy situation there.
Yeah.
Every offseason there's been something, whether it's me or Doug or new coaches. So it'll be a fresh start.
What are you doing in your offseason? What's your offseason?
I just got back from Hawaii.
Ooh.
What'd you do over there, man?
I surfed every day.
Wow.
How about you?
No one was unhappy to see him go. The question was, who steps in now without Rob Johnson in? And at that point, there was a small period where people looked at Alex Van Pelt as a possible answer. I mean, he wasn't anything great, but they had won 2 of their last 4 end of the year. He hadn't been terrible. Mm-hmm. They didn't have really anybody else to talk about at that point. The Bills fans were maybe talking themselves into Van Pelt as a regular starter.
I remember one of the things looking back on Rob Johnson, and it was a bad, when the times that he'd get hurt, when he really get lit, there were people that were cheering.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was bad to hear. I mean,
and you saw it in the media too.
Yeah.
People saying like, "Oh, Johnson hurt again."
Yeah, it was sarcastic. I mean, it's just a typical Rob.
Mm-hmm. First quarterback taken that year in the 2002 NFL Draft is Derek Carr to the expansion Houston Texans. Joey Harrington goes 2 picks later to Detroit. The Bills have the 4th overall pick, and they take Mike Williams, tackle out of Texas. Obviously, the history was not kind to Mike Williams in his NFL career, but what was the immediate reaction to that draft pick in 2002?
It was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
The guy was.
We see a lot with this team.
He was just like, he was a specimen. He was a specimen. He was like, he should have been
6'6",
everything you
370.
wanted.
Yeah.
The guy was just made to play football.
Chiseled out of a left tackle.
Yeah.
This was a no-brainer. There's no question. No one questioned the
Not
pick.
at all.
No one thought about going anywhere else. This was, I think the Bills were penciled in to take him weeks in advance.
Yep.
And then he shows up in Orchard Park, and he's a great guy to talk to, gregarious personality, fun to hang out with. There was no negatives with Mike Williams until he started playing football.
Right.
If I'm going to be the best, I'm just going to have to beat you, and that's my goal. And I'm sorry that you're right here, but that's just it. I apologize. We get off the field, I'm like, what happened to him? But while we're on the field, that's a job, and that's my passion for the game. And you just don't get in front of me, and you'll be all right.
Bryant McKinney goes a few picks later. There had been no discussion about,
not at all.
even though he's the Super Bowl tackle.
As it turned out, was the right choice. But no, at the time, Mike Williams was not only the guy as a tackle, but the guy for Buffalo. It was the year before. One of the reasons Rob Johnson got hurt is the O-line was not very good.
Exactly, yeah. And Rob Johnson obviously misses the second half of the season. Was averaging, at the time he got hurt in Week 9, was averaging 4 sacks a game.
Yeah.
that says it all. So the Williams draft is on April 20th. The very next day, the second day of the 2002 NFL draft, April 21st, the Bills make a trade.
Yeah, and I tell this story all the time. This was probably the first really monster out of nowhere story that I covered with the Bills. And now you might be able to verify some of these points, but I've been telling this story from my point of view. So the way we covered the draft then is the draft was 2 days. It was Saturday, Sunday. So John Kutchko, the sports director, was off, didn't worry. Dave would anchor the show on Saturday, and I would go up to Buffalo and hang out and interview whoever coaches, GMs, whoever came out and talked about draft picks. Well, that weekend, and probably most weekends, I was going to anchor and Dave was going to be off. So I was the only sports person scheduled that day. And it was Sunday morning, and I was driving home from somewhere, and I hear on the radio the trade goes down. Now, there was no call Dave and ask him what to do, no discussion. I called Dave and said, Dave, I'm going to Buffalo, you're anchor. Now, mind you, I had maybe 18 months of experience. I was the low man on the totem pole, and it wasn't a factor of me, talking trash or trying to, to puff my chest out. It was just how John had kind of conditioned the department. Something like that happens.
You respond to it.
We're going to go. And I didn't even talk to you. I left you a message. From your end, what do you remember about that day?
I just remember scrambling because back then you're like, okay, you can't just pull things up like you can now on the internet and like look what's going on. It was just okay. Let's get everything together. Let's get in there and just go from there.
And John showed up later too on his own. Yeah.
And it's Drew Bledsoe coming off a Super Bowl win with the Patriots. He obviously didn't play in that Super Bowl win over the Rams, but the thought that it's Bledsoe, a guy that they knew from competing against him in the division for so many years. I mean, we've seen the video of fans calling in the season tickets just flying off the shelves from the Ralph. I mean, that must have been the home run to end all home runs, bringing in Bledsoe, even though he was a vet at that point and had been replaced by Tom Brady.
But it was just, that was the answer. That was what you wanted. I mean, that was just a colossal move. It was huge to have him there. And it was like a circus up there. When they brought him in, it was like you see one of those old time like political rallies when it was just it was right. It was.
And the other thing you got to remember too is that the Bills at that point had a few years of quarterback purgatory, as Doug Whaley so famously said. They had Todd Collins and Doug Flutie, who was fun, but he was 5'2" at best. And then it was Rob Johnson, and then it was Alex Van Pelt for about 5 games. Drew Bledsoe was a legit quality quarterback. Proven, exactly. And even there was a little bit in the back of your mind, and we all talked about it, about why would the Patriots give him up in division? But no one really, it's Drew Bledsoe, they'll be fine.
Every time the Bills would play the Patriots and Drew was behind the center, on offense I held my breath for, I think it was 9 years. He's been to the Pro Bowl, and to get a player and an individual with this character and ability is a real big plus for the Bills.
I'm coming to Buffalo for one reason and one reason only, and that is to win football games. This is an organization that has a great tradition of excellence, and I hope I am part of the team that returns it to that tradition of excellence.
And the Bills traded away a first-round pick, which you figure it's going to be at the end of the 2003 first round. So first-round picks, first-round schmicks. Who cares? So Bledsoe's here. Mike Williams is here. Things are good for year 2 of the Gregg Williams era. June 3rd, which is kind of a strange time for news like this, but the Bills cut John Fina. And he is the remaining player from the Super Bowl era still on the Bills. Phil Hansen retired at the end of the 2001 season. And we talked about this already, of just kind of the finality of that era is over. John Fina is the last one to go. Your interactions with him, what was he like to cover?
You go first, Dave.
I think a lot of people that dealt with that team at that time, John Fina was not one of our favorite people to talk to.
Least favorite.
Yeah, he was up there, definitely. I mean, he was just
Say that with authority, least favorite, period?
John Fina, if you did an interview with the player next to him, like John Fina's locker was here, I don't know, it might have been Reuben Brown, another offensive lineman. If you wanted to talk to someone, You couldn't stand in front of John Fina's locker, even though the lockers, again, are probably closer than we are. He would physically move you out of the way, or he would accost you. There was no respect, no love. He was a jerk. Now, people ask me, I'll do career days at schools. People talk about, who'd you like in the locker room? Who you didn't like? I would always, John Fina was the worst guy. Without hesitation, the worst guy. Now, he might not be a bad guy. As it turns out, maybe 7-8 years later, I'm doing a career day in Rochester, New York at a school called St. John's. I had a cousin that went there. Her kids were there. So I get that question about who I didn't like. I say, John Fina. Put my hand out, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, after I get done, a kid in the class comes up to me and goes, John Fina is my cousin? I'm like, what? He has family in Rochester, New York.
No kidding.
And so the kid says, yeah, John Fina is my cousin. And he didn't see him all the time, but he sees him. And I said to him,
well,
really?
If he's a kid and Fina's his cousin, I mean, Fina would be...
That might have the family relationship wrong. It wasn't like an uncle, brother. Yeah, it might have been uncle, might have been whatever. Yeah. But it was close enough that they knew each other. Yeah. And so you had that moment like, but then I thought about it, I said, you know what? You tell him I said that. And he probably wouldn't have cared because that was, and that was also the era, remember the Broncos offensive line wouldn't talk to media famously. Yep. He was of that ilk of just, he had no respect, no time for them. He might have respect, but treated us like vermin that were in his way in the locker room.
I wonder when did that kind of shift with the O-line? Because we look at the Bills locker room now, and I don't, Richie Incognito obviously has all the baggage that's come along with his history, but you can talk to him. Right. He will talk at his locker. Eric Wood and the other guys too.
There were certain guys in the locker that you were, like Ted Washington was not one that you wanted to really go to unless you had, you had to. He was not. He didn't like the media. He wasn't media friendly. But then, like you just said, Reuben Brown. Reuben Brown was just. I mean, he was like one of the go-to guys. Yeah. So it wasn't a unit. It was more of an individual thing by far.
Peerless Price was another guy that was tough. I remember one time, Peerless Price was talking to a writer, and in open locker room situations, if the guy's talking, you can kind of walk up and join in. And so he's talking to a writer, and I went to walk him and join in. He stopped what he was saying, looked at me, and said, "This is not for you. I'm not talking to you," and turned around. And that was, Peerless Price was of the prima donna wide receiver ilk. Now he had his good moments too, but I think Fina, Washington, Price were probably the three historically stay away when it comes to a media.
And then you turn around and find a tight end because tight ends
were great. Fullbacks were great.
Tight ends and fullbacks.
But you want to talk about to sum up, when did it switch? When the Bills weren't good enough to treat media like dirt anymore. That's when it switched. Yeah. Because when all these years they've been bad, they didn't have the cachet as a football team. They're still rich and millionaire football players. But to me, I think the team hasn't been good enough to really get on the media. There have been moments for sure.
Yeah.
But
and some of them deserved.
Exactly. It's not all the players' fault by a long shot. But John Fina was the last of the Super Bowl guys, and there was an era of deserved, in many cases, superiority there.
Well, Fina is gone. And we've talked about it. It's a new era for the Buffalo Bills. Gregg Williams is the head coach. Mike Williams is the their number one overall pick number 4. Drew Bledsoe is the quarterback. Let's bring in new jerseys. And what were your immediate thoughts looking at that feast of blue just all over the place on changing up a jersey look that I think looks really nice, those 90s and even in the 80s, that look that the Bills used during that decade.
I like the dark blue. I liked it when
you're the only one.
No, I liked it when it came out. I was like, that's not bad.
I didn't like the blue shoulder pad white jersey. I didn't.
Yeah, right. I didn't like that one either. I didn't like that one at all.
The home blue, especially when they went blue on blue with the blue pants, that was actually popular-ish for a while. I liked them.
No, that white with the blue looked like an old AFL team.
Yeah, that was bad. And I'll tell you what, in 2001, end of the year, it was like second last week of the year. I don't think I ever told you this. But we were doing a media day or some function in Buffalo, and the practice field where the Bills practice, it's right up to the parking lot, but it's covered with like a screen, plastic tarp, so you can't see in what's going on. But there's little cracks, you kind of walk by and see what's going on. There was a time we were done with everything we had to do. We were probably on our way back to get into the car or whatever, and I walked by the practice field, and there was one player running around in full uniform. It was like a silhouette. And I kind of looked over, and the uniform, I didn't recognize it. I, to this day, will swear that the Bills had maybe not that uniform, but a version of it. They were looking at someone running around in a person to try it out. I don't know. I thought it was 80, so I thought it might have been Eric Moulds. But I swear
espionage.
Exactly. And again, I told him this the other day. If we had Twitter now, I would have gone up there and had my
Yeah.
phone, you know, like, and we see me, you know, I'm going to put that out on Twitter now.
First
you know?
told to have you taken out.
That would have been the last thing I would have done in Buffalo, yeah.
So we go into training camp in 2002. The Bills are at St. John Fisher, their third season there. The big news really from training camp doesn't even happen at St. John Fisher. It happens in Canton, Ohio. And Jim Kelly is inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Dave, you mentioned about how touching it was to see Hunter, Jim Kelly's son, when Kelly's number was retired last season against the Seattle Seahawks. But to see that Hall of Fame ceremony, and this time they had moved the Hall of Fame ceremony from the actual Hall of Fame to the stadium across the street. Just what was that like, seeing tens of thousands of Bills fans there to celebrate their hero, Jim Kelly?
Well, I think, you know, after the last couple of years, any celebration for a Bills fan was going to be embraced wholeheartedly. So it was, you know, especially like we talked about last week about, you know, Jim had gone from just being that football player to being so much more for the community and, you know, the representative of his family, and that was the transition. So to see him get that honor was just, you know, it was so well deserved and just phenomenal.
Since the day I was selected, I prayed to God that my son would be here with me today. God has granted me that blessing. It has been written throughout my career that toughness is my trademark. Well, the toughest person I've ever met in my life is my hero, my soldier, my son, Hunter. I love you, buddy. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Buffalo, and God bless.
Hold on. Hey, Andre.
Here.
I hear it, man. I appreciate it. All right, Andre. Come on, Mikey. Just talk about what Kelly meant to you and how special this day was after seeing what you saw here today.
Well, I mean, it was like a recording. I've said it 50 times. I mean, what he meant to me is I just knew that he was just a guy that exuberated confidence, and you knew something was going to get accomplished. You know, regardless of what the score was, what the situation was, you know you can count on that guy every time you're out there.
3, 2, 1. Jim Kelly brought down the house. A record crowd of over 18,000 were on hand, many of them to see number 12. It was a day where Canton, Ohio could have passed as Orchard Park. Jim Kelly fans were everywhere.
So we go into 2002, and before we dive into the season, maybe to just kind of, for those who maybe aren't aware of how we do this, so walk me through, even though I've done it too, walk the audience home, or walk the audience through covering a home game for the Buffalo Bills.
In terms of what we did during the game?
Yeah, what time are you there? What are you doing during pregame? What are you getting during the game, postgame? You know, from when you wake up almost in the morning to when you go to bed at night, it's all Bills football.
As a Rochester-based station, we're in to leave at 9 a.m. Dave was very good about bringing donuts.
Every Sunday.
Oh, it was great.
Man.
Oh, man.
That is a tradition that has not maintained throughout the years.
You know, I had a lot of donuts then, and there's a price to be paid for all those donuts. But it was great then, and then the Bills had food for us too. But you arrive at the stadium, you know, with traffic about 11 or so. You get settled, and then both of us are on the field pregame. Yeah. And at that point, one of the things we did at News 8, and it was a lot of fun, is our Bills coverage that night would begin with an NFL Films, set the NFL Films music, little montage of different shots of, you know, like things NFL Films-ish, you know, dissolve.
I've seen them. They look incredible, some of the old ones.
I mean, Dave was really good at, you know, getting angles and different stuff. So we're on the field at noon, you know, minimum, getting all those things done. And in addition, you're also trying to get, you know, shots of guys and coaches that you may need. And we do it now more. I drill this into you now because you never know when that backup quarterback, TJ Yates, might be a Buffalo Bill, or when that offensive coordinator might be the next head coach. So you want to get video of all those guys just in case.
Yeah, exactly. I just remember, like, when I'd first get there, myself and some of the other guys, we'd just go out and we call it taking a lap. We just walk around the stadium, just even in Orchard Park, just without our camera, just walking around just for the heck of it, kind of then go back in, and we'd have our tripod set up with the press conferences for post game and have our batteries plugged in and all that stuff and get ready to go.
I will say that, like, being on the field during a game is one of the biggest highlights of this job. And you get that perspective of the game as it's played right in front of your eye, and you see the speed, the strength, and the size of these guys up close and personal. But pregame, I think, and we've touched on this in previous episodes, of just how neat it is to see the interaction before the game, because even at that time, the guys kind of have their guard down a little bit. They're focused, but you can, they're not in helmets, they're not in pads. You can see them warming up. What was that like in the early 2000s, doing that over and over again at home and on the road?
Well, it got really, it was, when I first started, you had a lot more flexibility as far as going on the field for intros and things like that. So you could get stuff of them coming out the tunnel that you can't get now.
You could be on the 50-yard line as guys were being introduced.
Yeah, I'd be out when they come running down out of that inflatable helmet, and they'd be jumping on each other. I'd be out at midfield getting that, and that was just the kind of thing that was just, that's burned into my head. That was just some of the best stuff.
Get y'all asses up! Get y'all asses up!
The other difference then to now, then Dave and I would both shoot the game. So I'd be on the Bills sideline, Dave would be on the road sideline. And we'd want to be in the right spot for whatever happened. And we'd have like hand signals about, okay, I'm going to go down, you stay there. And we would back and forth, we'd be communicating the whole game about, do you want to be behind the offense? Do you want to be downfield of the offense? If there's a game-winning field goal, you get the isolation shot of the kicker to react. So we had all kinds of hand signals.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and one would stay, if one would stay on the quarterback, the other would follow the ball on the pass.
Yeah, exactly.
So if the quarterback was getting hit or something like that, you'd have the angles of whatever you needed.
And the Bills, or the NFL, and we'll get into this probably in later episodes of this, but in 2005-06, the NFL tried to lessen the congestion in the sideline and or take over control of video for themselves by reducing the number of people on the sideline. So we can't do that anymore. But back in 01, 02, 03, 04, we shot a lot of games together. And it was fun because as someone who's on the field, you're trying to get the good shot. It's the game within the game for us. And to have a teammate out there that we're coordinating with made it all the more fun and interesting and exciting.
And that was really, you look at, when we talk about these games, I sit there and I think, well, yeah, that game was bad, but you know what? The Bills got crushed. I got a great shot of that touchdown.
Yes.
So it was like, okay, they're getting killed, but I got some good video from this one.
Yeah. I do want to say, though, the two of you, and I'm not trying to inflate your tires, are two of the best football shooters I've ever seen. And the video that you guys are able to get, and I know this from my own experience and watching others try to shoot NFL games from the field, the skill it requires to cover a game that played that fast right in front of you and to make the right decisions and to not, be too fast or too slow, out of focus, in focus. Were there any exercises or anything you guys did pregame at that time to kind of maybe train your eye, or to, you watching the players warm up? Are you doing warm ups too?
That was training camp, was kind of that. When training camp started, you kind of got used to it. But really, I should not be talking at all. Everything I learned from him. Not a joke. I had an idea when I got the News 8 about how to do it, but Dave was the expert, and I attached to the hip. What'd you think of this? Yeah. What'd you do here? He was the one that really, guided me and mentored me into doing this.
And there was a guy at Channel 13 who, Carl Schuba, he was the guy who everybody looked at as he was the top dog, and it was kind of like, I kind of would go to him for some stuff on, what do you do in a situation like this, that kind of thing. But I think a lot of it comes from playing sports. It's instinct. It's like you kind of, knowing the game is huge. You know that. Knowing what to expect and where to, okay, what are they going to do here? And then you start learning the tendencies and that kind of thing. Another big thing was, you always talk about the quarterback arm angle. You see the elbow drop back, he's going deep. If it's up like that, so you try to pick up on stuff like that.
And getting used to quarterbacks play action fakes too. Some are better. Mark Sanchez killed me all the time. Of all the people in the world, he was the guy that stands out. Bill's quarterbacks, by and large, I thought have had terrible play action fakes.
Flutie was a bear just because he was so short.
Yeah.
You just could not. You couldn't find the worst I ever got faked out was at a home game. One of the worst home game against the Colts. Peyton Manning faked the handoff and kept it on a bootleg and ran around the other.
33-yard touchdown, the longest run of his career. I didn't want to bring that up because that happened last season. I didn't want to.
I'm still looking for him. I'm like, did he really just run that in?
Peyton Manning, the slowest quarterback maybe ever.
Yeah. And part of that is that in that case, probably knowing the game burned Dave, because there's no way he's ever looking for Peyton Manning running the ball.
Oh man. Well, this may have been a little too inside videography for. Believe me, I really enjoyed it. So let's turn to the 2002 season before we go completely off the rails. The first game ever for Drew Bledsoe in a Bills uniform. Ends Eric Mold's game-tying touchdown with 26 seconds left, but the great feelings don't last for long, do they?
No. Against the Jets, and this was what's known as the Chad Morton game.
Yep.
He returns 2 kickoffs for a touchdown. The second one is in overtime, and he ran by me. And one of the things that we were coached to do, and I didn't do it as well, is for a kickoff return, you got to be down by the end zone, because that's really the only highlight that matters on that is going to happen there.
Yeah.
So I was down at like the 10, and he catches the ball, and he had already run one back. And you're thinking, there's no way it happens again. And then he breaks a couple tackles, and the whole way it's like, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. You're kidding me.
Where's the flag? Where's the flag?
Yeah. And then he scores, and then, okay, Drew Bledsoe's 0-1. Welcome to Buffalo.
And that was, talk about deflating.
Yeah.
Talk about Deflategate, right?
Yeah, I know. But the way he tied the game up, the narrative was there for, the chosen son has come in, the trade has worked out, and then the Jets just beat him with a kickoff return. Again.
Week 2, the Bills go on the road to Minnesota, and this game, it may be the most fun game of the entire Bills drought. I know they've had some wins against the Patriots that were really fun, but in this game, Bledsoe goes for 463 yards, which is a Bills record that still stands today, threw for 3 touchdowns. Peerless Price has 2 touchdowns. Charlie Rogers returns a kickoff for a touchdown. Mike Hollis bangs in a 54-yarder off the crossbar. Dave, you were there in Minneapolis, and I won't get on you about the Moss touchdown you missed in that one, or earlier in the Bills playoff drought, but just covering that game in Minneapolis, I can't imagine there must have been a game more fun.
It was absolutely off the charts, and the best thing about that was the tying field goal.
Hollis at the end of regulation?
I lost track of things. I thought it won the game. I started going on the field to get the celebration, and nobody's with me. I'm like, what's going on here? They're like, wait a minute. One of the PR guys for the Bills had to pull me back on the sideline before I got ready.
One of the things, the reason Dave did that is one of the things we do is once a game's over, you want to get on the field to get the coaches'
reactions.
Yeah. So whether the game's 40-0 or 40-39, the moment that horn, moment it's all zeros, you're on the field. And you got to pay attention to the score.
We talk about looking at the scoreboard.
I know, situations, and I got ahead of myself.
Peerless Price has a game-winning 48-yard touchdown in overtime in that one. And okay, the Bills are 1-1, but they are entertaining and exciting. And coming off a 3-13 season, that's all you can ask for, really. Yeah. And what was that like, at that point early in the season? I know it's only 2 games in, but just thinking like, okay, this team's going to score a lot of points and probably give up a lot of points too.
Well, you figure they're 1-1, but the way they lost the first one,
you're not going to do that again.
They shouldn't have lost that. Yeah. So you're in a good. You're really.
Yeah. People were excited. 1.5. We were still Drew Bledsoe honeymoon 100%. DEFCON 5. The whole thing.
Week 3, they go on the road to Denver. Not nearly as fun at all. Bledsoe sacked 4 times. He's had 11 sacks through 3 games this season. Bills lose that one. Week 2, they reach the 3-quarter poll at 2-2 with a win in overtime. In that one, and then in week 5, they lose to the Oakland Raiders, who go on to the Super Bowl that year. Oakland wins 49-31, and this is a theme of the Bills' drought. 4th quarter collapses. Oakland scores 21 straight points in that one, as Oakland goes on to win 49-31. Then in week 6, the Bills win in Houston 31-24, and week 7, the Bills go on the road to Miami. Eric Moulds is a 70-yard touchdown. Ray Lucas picked off 4 times, and we talk about bad quarterbacks. Ray Lucas has to be on that list of the worst quarterbacks that the Bills face during this era. Jay Fiedler is hurt, so that's why Lucas is in there. Week 8, the Bills host the Detroit Lions. Joey Harrington makes an appearance. Really nothing all that special. Bills win that one. They go to 5-3. They've now won 3 straight games. And, does this kind of, at this point now, we're halfway through the season. They're 5-3.
We're on our way.
Yeah. Exactly. The 3-3 team is a blip. Yep. It's in the rearview mirror. I mean, at this point, happy, I guess, with Gregg Williams.
Yeah.
Even with the bad record and the bad offensive line, Bledsoe's getting hit a lot.
It was more Bledsoe that people were happy about.
It wasn't. Greg still wasn't, I think, any great shakes, and I think they were just happy with the way things looked like they were turning around.
Mm-hmm. Week 9, New England Patriots come to the Ralph. Thad, just let you take it from there.
The first Brady Bledsoe game was going to be a big deal, and everybody knew it going in. So, John Kutchko, bless his heart again, had the idea to not only, now media day, to back this up a little bit, media day is Wednesday for most teams. It's the day where most media, hence the name, gather their material for stories for the rest of the week. Not all of it, but 80-90% of it, the chunk of it.
And the coaches talk.
Exactly, everybody talks. So we went up to Buffalo every week, of the season. Well, John said, as big as this game is, let's go to New England too. So John sent Dave to Buffalo, and he sends me to Foxborough to cover Patriots media day. And at that point, this was still 2002. So Belichick was not the legendary monotone, I'm not going to say. He was just another coach.
He still has a Super Bowl ring as a head coach.
But even then, everybody thought the Rams were winning that game.
Yeah.
That Super Bowl, with the tuck rule and the way the Super Bowl went and the Rams were heavily favored, that Super Bowl was looked at a fluke. I remember that year the NFL had these cool ads where at the Super Bowl, they said, here's what everybody was saying back in preseason. And one of the ones they did was some guy in a Chad Pennington Jets jersey, like talking with his friends, and he goes, Tom Brady, not that good a quarterback. And at the time, in September of 2002, you could have believed it. And again, throughout that year, people, all right, the Patriots won the Super Bowl, but whatever, that's just 1 year. It wasn't what they are now. So we go to media day, and Belichick's another coach. When they brought us into the locker room, Tom Brady didn't speak at the podium because he wanted to be one of the other guys, so he spoke in front of his locker. Well,
and that was something that was true for a long time with Brady.
A lot of guys do that, and not just him.
Yeah.
So they bring us down a hallway, and it's Boston media getting ready for the game against Bledsoe. It was as big there as it was here. So there was 40, 50, 100 people. It was a large number.
I can believe it.
And we're all in a tunnel maybe 4 or 5 feet wide, 6 feet wide, something like that. There's enough that's like three wide. So when it's time to go in the locker room, when the period opens, it's like release the hounds. They open the door and everyone beeline to the Tom Brady locker. And I kind of expected this and didn't mind hustling. So I got up there and I was probably in row 2 of the group of media. So I'm still piled in, trying to get a camera here, a microphone there. And I had one of the better shots. There were 30 people behind me that were on stools, holding things in the air.
Boom mics.
Oh, yeah. And we want to hear. And Tom Brady,
says nothing.
Exactly. Didn't really have to be there, but you're supposed to be there. And one of my favorite moments working at News 8 was watching it back later when Dave does his report. And at the end of his report, he goes, I'm Dave Yates in Orchard Park. From over, we go to Thad Brown in Foxborough. And next shot is me at Gillette Stadium. It looks so cool. And then John ends the whole thing. So I say Thad Brown in Foxborough, and John comes back and he goes, on the air, he says, if we had someone else, we would have sent them to Miami. And he goes, I'm just kidding. Kind of. It was a fun week for us, and it was interesting to see that story from both sides.
And you also have a story, Thad, from the sideline of that game, from the Bills-Patriots. Involving one of your favorites.
So there was a guy, you remember Ward, obviously, right, from WGRZ in Buffalo. He was one of the funniest men I've ever known. Just, great to hang out with. So we're standing on the sideline in Orchard Park pregame, Bills-Patriots. And lo and behold, there's Jessica Alba on the sideline. Now, exactly. Now, in many NFL stadiums, it's not unusual to see celebrities on the sideline. I've seen John Bon Jovi at Jets games. Who was the Soprano star? I don't know.
James Gandolfini?
He was at Jets games all the time. I saw Lisa Leslie at a Dolphins game, not this past year, or no, a Rams game, just this past year. So, but Jessica Alba, or anyone in Orchard Park, was brand new. So we were both big fans. And Ward says to me, I wish I could go talk to her. I'm like, well, we probably could. He's like, no. So he goes to do something else. And I'm thinking, when am I ever going to get another chance? So I go up to
Shoot your shot, Thad.
Exactly. I go up to Jessica and I say, Jessica, my name is Thad. I'm a huge fan, and I have this idea, and I thought of it before I went up to talk to her. I said, would you mind, I'm going to have you hold the microphone, would you mind saying that whenever I'm in Rochester, I always watch Thad Brown on News 8? Well, me being debonair and charming is all get out. She giggles. She's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we'll run that.
Yeah, we have it.
She goes, sure. So I hand her the microphone, camera on my shoulder, and she goes,
hi, I'm Jessica Alba, and I always watch Thad Brown on News 8.
I was in. So I said, thank you very much. You appreciate it. Good luck with your career. Love you. She was on a show called Dark Angel. I told her I watched it. Complete lie. So I go back into the media room, and of course the coup de grace of this is showing Ward what I had gathered. And I go, Ward, come here. So I had it all queued up in the camera. I'm like, check this out. So he looks in. I hit play. And he sees, and he goes, dude, come on, that's not fair. And it's still, whenever someone new comes into the sports department, one of the first things is, I got to show you this.
A 15-year-old memory with an old love, Jessica Alba.
Even the wife appreciated that one. Yeah, I'll tell you what.
Well, of course, because it is Brady and Belichick against the Buffalo Bills. Didn't go well for the Buffalo Bills. Bledsoe sacked 4 times, picked off as well. Brady wins his first game in Buffalo, or his second game, in Buffalo against the Bills, 38-7. The Bills are now 5-4. And after this game, Gregg Williams, his play calling is called out by Ralph Wilson. said it was too conservative at this point. And, you guys touched on this a moment ago of just that Bledsoe was seemingly the guy that was carrying this team. Was he doing it in spite of Williams in the eyes of fans and the media at that time?
I think so. I think there was a lot of. It's like you've got the guy. Let him go. Just let him do what he's here to do, basically.
And Gregg Williams didn't really win any friends his first year in 2001. He was not
3-13 will do that.
Well, it's not even about that though. It's about the way he acted in front of a microphone, his attitude. The public persona of Gregg Williams was not warm and fuzzy, and that's just not his way.
Yeah.
And
we know that now for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you pile a 3-13 season on top of that, he was not a fan favorite. Drew Bledsoe, on the other hand, was the savior.
Yeah.
So for most of that season, whatever positive was Drew and whatever negative was, if I remember correctly, was Gregg for the most part.
So they come out of the bye week in Week 11. They go to Kansas City. The Bills drop that one late, lose 17-16. Week 12, the Bills go on the road to the Meadowlands to take on the Jets, James Gandolfini's favorite team. And before that game starts, Tom Donahoe and Ralph Wilson are walking along the field pregame, and some fans have some choice words for Mr. Donahoe and Mr. Wilson. First off, who shot that?
That was me. So Donahoe and Ralph Wilson walk onto the field at the tunnel for pregame, and Jets fans act like any opposing fans would. New York fans a little more so than
the worst.
Kansas City. Yeah, I mean, they have their moments, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary.
Tough guy. Tough guy. Tough guy. You're a tough guy. You're a tough guy. You're a tough guy. Your defense is great. God.
What was out of the ordinary is that Ralph Wilson was, going back and forth with him. 83-year-old. Now he wasn't too quick on the draw, but so fans are yelling at him. He walks out and kind of turns around and slowly shakes his finger. Well, Donahoe was next to him, and you kind of got the feeling that Donahoe had to stand up for his boss.
Yeah.
So Donahoe was kind of yelling and doing finger wags, stuff like that, and nothing out of the ordinary. It would have made for a funny Twitter video now. And then I shot it, and it was all right. I mean, it was just unusual to see anyone having that kind of repartee with a fan, because if it's a football player, they're bigger and stronger, and the fan will be quiet. In this case, the owner and the GM were not that. So they were going back and forth, and the fans were letting them have it, and no one. It was kind of everybody enjoyed it, but no one was friends with the other side.
No.
It was very adversarial.
Well, in that game, the play of the game that sticks out from watching it back, Eddie Robinson gets faked out of his shoes by Chad Pennington. You talk about football players being, these guys cut out of stone. No one is saying that about Chad Pennington. No offense, Chad. So to see him juke a player out, was that kind of the moment where you go, oh, that 5-3 start, that's in the rear view now, because the Bills go on to lose this game in the Meadowlands 31-13. They've now lost 3 straight and are now under 500 at 5-6.
That was the beginning of the end, I think, for the Gregg Williams idea of a defense, because Eddie Robinson was 32 going on 82, and probably no business playing D. And the way Chad Pennington undressed him was really pointing out the flaws in what the Bills had attempted to construct defensively. And that's why they brought in like 7 new linebackers the next year.
Yeah.
And the pressure is growing on Kevin Gilbride as well, as the Bills only scored 13 points. We've seen, through these last 2 seasons, shutouts, 3-point performances, 6 points, 13 in this one. Gilbride is the new offensive coordinator. Was there any honeymoon period for him after those first 2 weeks? It seems like after the early start to that 2002 season, everything turned south in terms of the response to the Bills' offense.
There was a lot of head scratching because, Gilbride was no slouch when it came to his job, and you thought he was going to be able to do it, and he started out doing it well, and it's like, what happened?
He was like the last big name offensive coordinator they had. He was a good name, more notorious than anything else because of the Buddy Ryan fight. But you bring him in with Drew Bledsoe, it was supposed to work. This wasn't some neophyte, no-name guy. This was Kevin Gilbride. And with Drew Bledsoe, it was supposed to function fine.
The following week, the offense finds its life once again, this time at home against the Miami Dolphins. Drew Bledsoe throws for 306 yards, 3 touchdowns as well. Eric Moulds has this great one-handed catch going into the end zone. Ricky Williams said pregame he had never seen snow before. This was a cold, snowy day in Orchard Park as the Bills go on to win 38-21. Week 14, Brady Bledsoe once again, this time in Foxborough. Pats were up 20-0 at halftime. Is there anything memorable from that game as the Pats go on to blitz the Bills 27-17?
I think the biggest thing was we didn't cover anything like we covered the first game. Like there were no trips to Foxborough. Like that. that had kind of gone out the window. And I think the fact they had lost 3 in a row, that was more the story about what's wrong with the Bills.
Right.
Remember, that was the one year that Brady played and the Patriots didn't dominate the division. They didn't even make the playoffs that year. So at early December, all 4 teams were still in it. And the Bills were the ones that took a nosedive. The Jets and Dolphins and Patriots all went right down to the last week of the season. So that was more the talk than the whole Brady Bledsoe thing was done.
Right.
And at this point, the Bills' season is basically hanging by a thread. Their Week 15 game against San Diego is blacked out. And you think about all the talk about playing San Diego the year before. Now they play San Diego, and nobody even bothers to want to go to a game like this. But the Bills do go on to win 20-13. They're now back to 500 at 7-7. And at this point, they now need to win out and get help. So in Week 16, they go to Green Bay, and nothing went right.
No.
And that was your game,
That
right?
was my game, yeah. I mean, it was awful.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bad game from my perspective. I think shooting-wise, I think I had some good stuff, but I just remember it was cold.
Yeah.
It wasn't awful cold.
Lambeau in December.
Yeah. And if you go to Lambeau, you want to go in December.
Yeah,
that's
true.
You've got to be there for that. But I remember, I think, if I'm not mistaken, their stadium was undergoing renovations as well, and the locker rooms weren't complete. So the visiting locker rooms were actually like trailers out in the parking lot. So
I did not know that.
If I'm not mistaken, that's where we did the post-game interview. That's like the one thing I remember from that. Yeah.
Well, the Bills lose 10-0.
Yeah.
Eliminated from postseason contention. And the criticism of the offense was a major theme in the second half of the season. To put up a goose egg in the deciding game of the season. I mean, at this point, I know, we know obviously with hindsight that Gregg Williams gets another season, but at this point, are you thinking like, oh man, this?
Well, yeah. When your season's on the line, you can't score any points.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are we doing here, right?
Yeah. Again, we're not to the point where it's panic. It's
no.
There was improvement, 3-13 to 8-8. Okay, let's keep going in that direction.
Yeah, exactly.
We have our quarterback.
We're on the right path.
The head coach, who knows? But whatever. They improved 5 wins from the year before. They were in it until Christmas, basically.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any sort of this is not going to work. There was a feeling that there are things that need to be fixed, but the Bills were on the right path.
Week 17, the Bills host the Cincinnati Bengals, win that game. Afterward, Peerless Price says he would like to stay. He's due a big, hefty payday, as Peerless Price had a great season. 1,200 yards receiving, 94 catches, 9 touchdowns. His partner in crime, Eric Moulds, 100 receptions, 1,200 yards. The two of them combined have nearly 2,500 yards receiving. And just the thought of, the season ends 8-8. The reflections afterward, Bledsoe throws for 4,000 yards, but it's another season without the playoffs. Does that thought of, okay, this is an improvement off 3-13, did that supersede the fact that they fell off late in the year?
No. Because again, we're not to that point where it's any big deal.
Yeah, there was hope.
Which
there wasn't after the end of the season before. You were just, what are we going to do now? Now we're in the middle of nowhere.
The Drew Bledsoe honeymoon didn't get into the playoffs, but it got everybody feeling like this was going to work at some point.
Well, now we turn to 2003, and could that hope manifest itself into a playoff appearance? For that, we turn to the next episode of Down and Drought.